only within your state, you would be in a state prison. The war on drugs, all of a sudden we had this overwhelming number of people in prison because of the war on, so-called war on drugs. And what the war on drugs has done, it has wreaked havoc and chaos in poor, low-income black communities and also in poor, low-income Hispanic communities. It has destroyed families. You've had, maybe fathers separated from their children, and right now in the United States, it's not just men, of course, who are being locked up for this. In recent years, we have a growing number of women who are being put in prison because of this war on drugs. So many times, the women, the mothers also get separated from their children, sometimes for long periods of time. So this is very destructive of our families and of our whole family life. And sometimes this has crossed maybe 2 generations. You have people maybe going to prison, federal prison or state prison for drug crimes. But a lot of times, the people who are put in prison for these, they're not some big-time drug dealers. They're not smuggling hundreds of thousands of dollars. It may just be their own personal chemical dependency. But nevertheless, they get these big, jail sentences because the laws were changed so that there could be severe punishment for people convicted of drug crimes in the United States. So this accounts for why at this time in our country we have what we call mass imprisonment of black people and other people of color. The United States of America only has 5% of the world's population, but even with 5% of the population, we have 25% of all the people in the world who are in prison are in the United States. So you just think about that. 5% of the world's population, yet we have 25% of all the people that are incarcerated in prison are in the United States of America. We have a very high rate of incarceration in the United States. And a lot of it is because of this so-called war on drugs that was deliberately started to destroy poor, low-income communities in our country. So the war on drugs not only helped to destroy, that's one of the reasons why in the country right now we do not have any kind of really radical black protests or left movements in the United States, because so many people have been locked up for long periods of time on these drug crimes. Black Panther political prisoners. One of my Black Panther comrades, he is still alive, but he's about my age. I'm 65 years old. He's been in prison since he was 24 years old. He's been in prison 40 years, right? Because he was a Black Panther, and because they didn't ever want him to get out. See, the reason they keep Black Panthers in prison such a long time is because they don't want them to come out and maybe be able to begin to organize the youth of today. So they really want to keep them locked up, and they really want them to die in prison, as Herman Wallace did a couple of weeks ago. So this is just an overview of the situation.
I had 2 life sentences for hijacking a plane to Cuba in the 1960s, to get out of this country. I should say, get out of the United States. They were going to they were going to keep me in prison, and did keep me in prison forever. Let me just say this. To understand how this happened in the United States and why this happened, the sister laid it out to you with very good efficiency. But to understand why it's still this way today and what it's doing today is really important. Now, some of these things are starting to happen in the UK, so this is why it's important for you to understand it. Somebody was talking the other day, well, marijuana cigarette over here in the UK is, at the most, is a misdemeanor by the cops. Usually just wave at you and keep going. Well, in the United States today, they'll give you 35, 40 years in prison. Or shoot you down in the streets, especially if you're black. They do this. We know of instances in our hometown of Memphis, Tennessee right now. We can tell you people have been shot and killed or put in prison for life because of marijuana, either, you know. So we're talking about a kind of situation and a system where, one, there is racial profiling in paramilitary policing. And let me explain to you what I'm talking about. As a result of the war on drugs, which is this war waged by, at the time of the Reagan administration, it had realistic effects. It wasn't just a war figuratively. You know, say, well, we're waging war on them. No, they actually had the police and a paramilitary force. Right now, if you look at the police in the United States, they look like the Army. And the reason they look like the Army is because they have armaments given to them by the U.S. military and other forces, you know, related to the military. So that every police force in America can get a tank if they want it. They can get an armored personnel carrier. They get machine guns. All 4 paramilitary cops, or 8, 10 paramilitary cops, to give you a warrant. You're wanted in court at 10 o'clock. If you don't show up, we'll come back and gun you down. You know, this, I mean, it's like this. This racial profiling. They throw up roadblocks in the black community and stop everybody. Everybody driving through there. They stop you, search your car or whatever, make you get down in the mud. You know, if need be. And just, this is the kind of paramilitary policing that goes on in the black community every day. It's worse in some cities. Some cities they actually shot and killed people right on the spot for nothing. You know, they gave, as they put it, we gave them directions. They didn't move fast enough, and we had to use the appropriate amount of force. And the appropriate amount of force is always deadly force. So this is the kind of reality of the effect of the so-called war on drugs. The war on drugs is a war on us. That's what it amounts to. The war on drugs is a war on us. So paramilitary policing, racial profiling are 2 parts of the kind of police state that they're assembling in the United States. The third part is mass imprisonment. And these cases of mass imprisonment, well, first of all, there's 2 types of sentencing process, even in the criminal court system. And they admit this. One is for whites. They got what they call, they prosecute people for powder drugs, as they call them. And the other is for, was for crack cocaine. And crack cocaine, as the sister was saying, was something that the federal government itself created and then distributed. They distributed it themselves. They didn't just give it to Freeway Ricky Ross. They gave it to all kinds of dope dealers on the West Coast. They said, here, this is free. Distribute this everywhere. You know, and the government did this. We call the CIA, which she was talking about the CIA, we call the CIA the Cocaine Import Agency. That's what we call them. And so they was saying back, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, they was saying around the time when the black community was attacking the CIA for distributing drugs, they had this saying that the White House is the crack house. You know, the White House ordered the drugs to be distributed in the black community. The White House used drugs as a political tool, a military tool. As the sister said, chemical warfare. And if you do any studies at all of military strategy, chemical warfare is a way to weaken the enemy. And in the case of the Black Power movement, the ending stages of the Black Power movement in the 1970s, they were trying to destroy a black political radicalism that was a real threat. Because at one time, the Black Panther Party, from the period of 1966 when it's involved, when it's created, up to 1972 or there's about, it was the #1 or the largest political movement on the left, period. And it was influencing not only black people or black youth, it was also reaching other ethnic groups, other social movements came into existence based on its ideas even, the gay movement, the radical feminist movement, other movements came into existence. They may not tell you that's why they came into existence, but they came into existence based on the model of black power and the Black Panther Party. The people in the United States had seen 10 years of the civil rights movement, and they've seen another 10 years of black power. And so they were greatly influenced by it, and they understood the whole question of social change, radical social change, and they wanted radical social change and wouldn't accept anything else. So that the whole purpose of chemical warfare and paramilitary policing and all this stuff you see today, people kicking in your door, and I know you have that here as well, at least the beginning stages of it, where you see the cops dressed up like vigilantes, or the cops dressed up like they're going to invade Iraq or something. Well, they did invade Iraq. Oh, okay. So what we're saying is this is another development in the whole process of repression by the counterintelligence program. This stage was the counterinsurgency program. Counterintelligence had one function. They had revolutionary forces. They were designed to destroy the revolutionary forces. Counterinsurgency was designed to go into the community and destroy the base of support for radical movements, so that the young black people would not care about working and becoming Black Panthers. They wanted them to become drug addicts. They wanted them to be politically neutralized. And this is what we're talking about here today. We're talking about a policy, a deliberate policy of the government, a form actually of genocide. Somebody says racial genocide. Well, if you look at the terminology for racial genocide that they use in the New United Nations and all these other locations, these other venues, legal definition, then you have to conclude that that's what it is, that they are using this, they use this and are continuing to use this as a tool of destroying the black people wholesale. And many people lost their lives as a result of this. Thousands of people died, and you got over 1 million even today in the prison system on drug charges or that got their time from drug cases. And then you got so many other things that destabilize the community in terms of youth gangs and all this stuff came out of this program. And you also have to look at instances, well, you have today mass poverty and lack of jobs in the black community. And right now in the black community in the United States, you got the highest level of unemployment in American history in the black community. And let me explain to you why I say that, and why I'm not even one just saying it. There are academics and researchers ahead of me, much smarter people than I am, who are saying it. And what they're saying is that in way before I was born, now just because I'm giving this information, don't think, oh goodness, he was around in 1930. Hell, I wasn't even twinkling in my mother's eye. But the point is that in the okay, so the crash, the so-called Great Depression happened in 1929. And from 1929 to 1932, the highest level of unemployment in the United States, I don't know about worldwide, but in the United States was 15%. After 1932, when they screwed up and started the trade war, it went up as high as 25%. Well, for the last 15 years in the black community in the United States, unemployment has been over 25, 30, 40%, depending upon the statistics we're talking about and the age group, where nobody's got jobs. There's massive unemployment, and it is targeted at the black community. Now, this does not happen as an accident. You know, like I said, some people starving and some people